in the American cultures. We're going to be looking at all the different concepts from Feng Shui. Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of Adventures into Reality. I am joined by my very special friend Kathy, and out in the field is Nat. Nat, welcome to the show.
Hi guys. This is really weird, but it's fun.
It's the first time we've had Nat calling into the studio, and the first time we've had Kathy in our studios. So Kathy, once again, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yes. So Nat, why don't you tell us how you met Kathy, how she came to the team, because she's a great friend of yours.
Yeah, horses. Horses, it's always been the horses. I always meet people through the horses, just like we met. So yeah, we met with the horses, and we were two partners in crime in a variety of ways. And Kathy was always, a couple of steps ahead of me. So she's like, oh, yeah, I'm now a Reiki master. And I was, traveling in Europe and coming back. I'm like, oh, really? She's like, I can initiate you. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I remember the first time after the first initiation, she's like, so what do you want to do? I'm like, let's check out Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Always thinking outside the box.
Yeah, outside the box. And this show today is really about being outside the box, where we're going to be making some deep connections between the Asian culture and the European and American cultures. We're going to be looking at all the different concepts from Feng Shui, martial arts, energy, Reiki, and a whole bunch of other things that will help people understand a ceremonial expression.
What I found so interesting is when we compare the two, and I was saying this to Andrew as well, growing up in Asia, was the smoke. The joss sticks, and Kathy and I, now in the break, we were regaling the stories of walking out of these ceremonies and the temples, and eyes streaming. And I would love to hear you guys both talk about both of your understandings compared from Asia to Americas.
As people have been known, I've been telling people about saging and smudging. And this comes from many different religious and ceremonial perspectives all throughout the world, where smoke is used to clear the field of energy. Smoke is also what empowers the ancestors to be a part of that area. Mm-hmm. So when you have an area that's being used, saged or something, or joss sticks that's being used to clear out dense energy, so the ancestors can be there in communication. When you acknowledge that saging and using burning smoke for a particular religious ceremony adds a whole nother dimension to the spiritual expression. Mm. And as you guys were saying, that you could go into some of these temples during the ceremony times, and it would be so thick you'd be crying from the smoke.
Oh, yes, definitely. There are many ceremonies that require going to the temple, different temples for different occasions. Let's talk about every year people go to Gunyam's temple because they go there to what they call borrow money. And you get like a ballot and you can maybe borrow $7 million, or it could be $100,000, you don't know. I mean, this is like spiritual money.
Spiritual money.
Which represents that you should be earning at least that much, in proportion.
And I call that the abundance of living and manifesting.
Yes.
It's the same concept.
Yes, definitely. And you would definitely buy at least probably 4 different types of joss sticks. You'll have the really big, thick ones. And you'll have a lot of the really small ones. So you will give offerings to Gunyam and her.
What is an offering? And that's an actual something that smokes?
Yes. You can just do the joss sticks, but normally you would also get a whole lot of different types of colorful paper with icons or for witches characters for
These are people actually go and print these because it's part of the
Yes.
ceremony.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, in Western they decorate the Christmas tree.
yes
Except they would take paper, take conscious manifestation of what that symbol means, and then it'd be placed in your ceremonial area.
well, they would take it to the god or the demigod, and they will offer it to them, do the joss sticks, say your prayers, ask for whatever it is that you want, and then you will leave the joss sticks there, and you take the paper offerings and you go out and burn them so that they will rise up to heaven or wherever it is to reach the god. But burning and the joss sticks, the incense is a big part of this ceremony. Because it clears the air, it's a ceremonial thing, and the smell of it and the essence of it is all over you. I mean, that was so right. We would go there and you couldn't even get in without your eyes streaming. You were lucky you didn't burn yourself trying to light these joss sticks because you just couldn't see.
Right.
But in a way, although this is probably so unhealthy for you, inhaling all this
But
smoke,
it's creating a spiritual alchemy when you're
yes,
doing it.
it's like being a total saging, and you would come out feeling so energized. Couldn't see well, but you felt great. You felt, you know, you were 10 foot tall and bulletproof.
Yeah.
And this would last with you for a very long time.
Very long time.
And then when 1 year comes up, you must go back and say thank you and go through the whole process again. And during that time, you would have had the lucky ballot and a lucky little envelope that you should have carried with you, and you will burn this as well to give it back to Gunyam.
To that. Who's also an ancestral demigod. How does that relate?
Well, in this sense, it's not so much ancestral as probably more religious.
More religious?
But you always will ask for them to look after your ancestors.
Right. It's a deity archetype that has common in their culture that takes this type of offering to give something back in return.
Yes.
It's kind of like, you know, pay it forward Fridays, you know,
Yes.
we have here.
Yes.
Except in the spiritual exchange form. So when you go and make those offerings during those ceremonial temples, you get that huge abundance of energy, and you come back the next year. Much of what I say is do this, you know, once a year, twice a year. You have the same effect. But it is about the ceremony, the ritual, and the actual process you put together to make these disciplines work. You know, I talk about you're telling your story to the fire. That is you being able to tell your spiritual ancestors what your story is.
Yes.
Because a lot of people here in the West can't share this modern spirituality with their local people or culture because it's just not commonly accepted or understood enough so that they can understand that you're doing something that is your own version of expression that is, you know, in one say, taking information from all the different cultural sources to identify how to live energy clean, energy hygiene, so that your world is not fixated just on the 3D matrix, but acknowledges the other side, the unseen side that's constantly working with you. And, you know, and it works under your health. You know, after those religions and ceremonies, you know, when people get sick in the Asian countries, they have a very different perspective than here in the West.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, your first point of call would be go to the Eastern medicine guy.
First thing, no matter what.
And they always, I mean, there is no stethoscope. You put your arm out and they do your pulse.
Yeah, the
and
three
from that, they
pulses.
can tell you everything. You know, whether you're menstruating that day, you know, if you've got kidney problems or just headaches, migraines, whatever it is.
Right. They can read your entire meridian system from their 3 fingers. They're so sensitive to that of your pulse that they can read exactly what your heart's doing, your lungs doing, or your qi, your internal essence.
Yes.
That what you're generating, how the flow of energy is working through you.
Yes, definitely. And from there, they will prescribe whatever herbs, concoctions that they put together. I mean, the truth is that always tastes terrible, absolutely terrible.
I've been there. It tastes horrible.
No, yeah. And they will always get you to put a big bar of the raw sugar in, but it really doesn't help.
Doesn't help.
No, you just have to drink it fast.
Just have to drink it fast.
Yeah.
So some of the things out there, moxibustion involves smoke.
Yes, and they're very big incense-like sticks. and they will put them over your meridian points. I mean, it can be quite hot, but it's also very relaxing. It tends to work for more minor ailments more than very chronic illnesses.
Right. For those people that are suffering temporary work stress, work injury,
Yes.
as well as the psychic stress that affects the organs from having bad relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's common.
Also moxibustion, a lot of my Chinese friends used to use to take wrinkles off their neck.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So
we'll just add that little one in there right there. Way better than plastic surgery.
poor man's plastic surgery.
Yes.
Moxibustion.
Just don't burn yourself.
Right.
So, and then you have other concepts like acupuncture and acupressure, but they
Yes.
still use the meridians, which is an expression that you have the Zhang Fu, which is all of your organs and meridian lines that make up the total energy you.
Oh, yes. It's very, very common over there. Your first point of call for any body work would be acupressure or acupuncture. Of course, with acupuncture, they won't treat you if you have what they call gang, which is scared of needles. In other words, if you see the needle or they poke it in and you pass out,
You're done.
they can't do it.
Yeah, they
you
can't
have
do
to
it.
be awake.
Yeah. And there's a reason, because you're impressing something into the energy body that you're poking a point,
Yes.
and you're actually putting a small needle through that energy center and bringing metal energy in
Yes.
there, which is very important in the 5 elements that's involved there, and it's about if it's pathogenic, warmth, or cold. And I speak about in the teachings understanding the difference between warm and cold. When you are experiencing pathogenic warmth, it is telling you something about your body and your health.
Yes, that is very true. That is very true. And what I think the trend is the last maybe 15 years, which is an interesting side note, is a lot of people are now getting acupressure points done with little tiny needles, but they stay in the ear for diet control. And every time you feel hungry, you're supposed to massage it, but it's supposed to suppress diet.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you if that works or not. I've had friends that have done it, but
I've looked into a lot of it. They work on the ears specifically, and sometimes they use these gold-tipped acupuncture needles, and the tip of the gold will stay in there. And after a while, it'll form a cyst over it, and then you rub it on there, rub in there. And those are for people with severe eating disorders, as well as facial tics, as well as smoking, sleep apnea too.
Yes.
Because when you're dealing with the ear, that is you as the fetus. When they look at that in that perspective, and then when they study the eyes, it's a matter of what veins are in the eyes. As well as doing the 3-finger checkup, they look at your tongue, they look at your fingernails, they look at how the body is growing. Where a lot of American medicine doesn't care what the fingernails say, but the fingernails and the tongue and the color of the eyes say everything about the human being in front of you. If they've got enough water in them, if they've been eating right, how they're sleeping.
Yeah, well, very much so. And the interesting thing is that the Western side of things, the Western outlook of medicine that I have encountered, really poo-poo all this Eastern stuff, to the point where they say if you're going to take this Western medicine treatment, you're not allowed to use the Eastern medicine stuff because it will clash and then you feel sick. And so you really don't tell the Western doctors that you're doing that. But they think that everything is not based in any fact, or all the research done is of no consequence.
Even though it's 5,000 years old.
Exactly,
And
but that doesn't matter.
5,000 years old. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we just have to think about that. I mean, if most of these doctors actually studied pharmacology, they would understand that everything is from the basis of herbs. Is it not?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Even pharmacology of today is everything is from the herb. They're looking how to synthesize it. That's the difference.
Yes. And also, if you do go to an Eastern, what they would call quack, and you get healed, then they have no business.
Right. They have no business. And the same with the Eastern side. They're going to say that it has no merit, no science whatsoever, and that's the two belief systems crashing.
Yes.
I mean, we as people that are trying to search through the whole new waves of energy today have to separate the bullshit from the facts and the semi-facts.
Yeah, definitely.
So, for those people out there that are having their own questions about the way, their medicine is being treated, go and pick up a book on basic acupressure.
Yeah.
Learn what the 3-finger reading is. You don't have to learn to do it yourself. Learn what it is. So if you ever go to one, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
But even if you could just massage your own feet
Massage
for
your
5
own
minutes,
feet.
that makes a big difference.
And it's commonly accepted as reflexology here in the United States or in
Yes.
Europe. But reflexology is a different expression in Asia because they look at acupressure as a full body expression, not just solely as the feet, even though there are specialists that look at the feet.
Yes,
Like
that's
the
true.
feet massagers. So it's very special where they work at the balls of the feet.
But the one thing I have to say about Eastern versus Western medicine or techniques is sometimes if you want a quick fix, you might be better off going to Western. Like we were saying earlier, a lot of the Eastern, the Chinese way, they believe in the 100-day cough.
Yeah.
So you have all the Eastern medicine that takes you through a 100-day cough to heal yourself.
No matter what the sickness is.
Usually if it's like flu-like or a virus, something like this, not a serious chronic illness. But the truth is, with work, it's very difficult to suffer for 100 days. So you might be better off, I'd probably choose to go to Western medicine and get it over within 10 days.
Right. Get the antibiotic, be done with it.
Yeah, purely because I don't have the time to be waiting for this total healing of the internal system. So you have to balance it with practicality for your everyday life as well.
Okay. Practicality, it is something that everyone must come down and use discernment about.
Yeah.
The concept of the 100-day cough comes from the ancient days where, there weren't antibiotics. There was just this oriental medicine that just used herbs. And if a sickness came around that was never been exposed to those herbs and could run rampant through them, or typhoid or something, that means that as long as you're getting, more bacteria in from the water and from the typhoid, it's going to keep getting worse and worse in you.
Yeah, definitely.
So the 100-day cough was a way that your body would be amplified, so your body's toning your blood and making it perfect so that it can gain a resistance that could be passed on to the next generation.
Yes.
And that's that 100-day cough expression. This would never fly here in the States or in Europe. But that is something from a perspective to look at. Instead of always using the antibiotics as the first choice, to at least allow some form of natural antibodies to be grown in yourself.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
And now in Asia, what we have a lot through, of course, all the different dynasties and the martial arts and what have you, is energy healing.
Energy healing.
Energy healing. You practice the qigong, you work up the energy. I mean, there are so many different formats, Kathy. Do you want to get into all the different formats? Because I know you're quite practiced in quite a few of them.
Well, I think over there, the biggest one is Hei Gong. So it's all about the qi in your body, channeling it, learning to control it. I don't know if you would exactly call it self-healing, but it's a very similar principle in many ways, learning how to capture your own energy and energy around you in your environment and getting it to flow in a smooth way.
I call it advanced preventative maintenance.
Yes, that is a very good terminology.
That's what expression of the self-healing with much of the Oriental martial arts or energy healing expression. Because if you don't understand your body daily, you're not going to understand it when you get sick.
That's so true. That is so true. And over in Asia, Reiki is also becoming very, very popular, which obviously is a much more familiar thing in especially America now. And that's something which is strange because it really originated within an Asian community, yet took, what is it Hawaii, I think, to come to America. Yes.
Japanese to Hawaii, to America, then to China.
Yeah.
But it was only created in the 1919 to 1930.
Yeah.
And then after the war, it came back after the last three masters, were finished and spread across the world. But it was its own natural evolution that also got it worldwide.
Yes. It's like, a hidden secret that the universe hid for a while.
That's in every library, though. The book that was forgotten in the library. And When it comes to Reiki, Reiki uses symbols that are connected to a ritual where an attunement is passed on to you. Okay, and like when you have your first Reiki attunement of the master, what they do is they seal the first symbol of power, the chokure, into your neck, and they use what's called the divine wind, which takes something direct from the much of the Asian expression when massage therapists or acupuncturists or pressurists are working on specific areas and trying to change the wind energy that's in you, because there can be something that's moving very fast through you when in fact it should be moving slow, or vice versa. So when you bring this wind energy, you are bringing the connective universal spirit power or quiescence to this person's crown chakra. So when they use that symbol and they're in a hand position, that crown energy is connected to the hands, to the third eye, so they can begin sensing and changing the energy around them.
Yes, that I remember that the most amazing thing for me was the reaction with pets.
Yes, yes.
That is the most visual response that was amazing. I mean, pets love it.
Love it. There's some of them, they'll just, as soon as the Reiki energy turns on, they will be all over you.
Yeah.
All over you.
Yeah, to the point where you're like trying to think, should I shut the door and keep them out? 'Cause I'm really
Exactly.
it's too much. But nice. And it's a wonderful energy as well, because even though you may plan to use it on a certain spot with someone, it just chooses its own path. So
It
what
does choose its
what
own
you
path.
think you might be helping someone with and what you end up helping them with, it could be completely different.
Right. And then at some of the more experienced levels, they can even do psychic surgery at some of the advanced Reiki therapies. And what they're doing in that psychic surgery is taking the symbols and reminding the body that it has a natural radiant blueprint of health. And the symbols bring that radiant blueprint of crown chakra energy to that specific area, remind it. And oftentimes the different practitioners stack symbols in different areas, or look at the energy centers or the meridian points or whatever other wisdom that they've learned in their process of studying health and medicine and energy, so that they can create waves that flow through people.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And it requires a little bit of a creative mind to begin to practice Reiki, because you are creating a flow. And that flow is how much within your mind and your own internal dialogue you are sticking with the symbols, because each symbol represents something different. Like we have Chokure, which is the power symbol. You're bringing energy to that area. It needs the divine essence energy there. Or the Seihaki, which is mental and emotional balance at all levels. So if you find something that has heavy hesitation, doubt, and stress and blame energy in it, that you can hover your awareness to remind that place that there is a natural balance, that you don't have to go into polarity.
Talking about Reiki and relationships, one thing I noticed a lot about my students and their feedback was, excuse me, they had unexpected results. Like they would often, in the 2 level, they would Reiki their relationship. And it comes down to unintentional manipulation. They would think, I'll Reiki my relationship and then it'll be stronger, and then they will marry me, or whatever it is, that their graduation that they wanted in the relationship. And then often it's not the case, because obviously it's not for the higher good, and in fact it could blow up in their face and the relationship is gone. So that's
because they brought in healing energy, and in
Yes.
unawareness began a process of healing in that person that
Yes.
rejected them.
Yes.
Because again, healing is for the highest good, and you may not be aware of some of those persons' habits that have happened to them. They maybe were abused as a child,
Exactly.
and that healing energy you brought to them really uncovered a dark time in them that they have to begin processing, because you just removed a blockage.
Yes. Yes.
So when it comes to Reiki and relationships, and in many of the students I dealt with, when I told them is to learn what sacred neutral really means to you.
Yes.
What would you want to done to you in unawareness?
Yes.
And think about what your boundaries are. So when you are doing something for the higher good, as an example, if you have a relationship, what I advise people to do is to just get a picture of that person and to stick it as far away from you as visually as possible, and just project whatever symbols you have with the concept of, I see you as a being with love as strings unattached. I offer this Reiki to you for your higher good, and for the higher good of this relationship, should it go anywhere. with a footnote. For those people that are in brand new relationships that are 1, 2, 3 days old, you should not be using Reiki in that scenario other than on yourself.
Yes.
Because the teaching of Reiki 2, sending treatments forward and backward in time, is about the agenda of the self. So if you want to be able to be more open, let's say you're talking to a girl, if you're a guy or in another situation, if you're a woman, and a man comes up and is making a pass at you, that your energy field stays stable and you don't go into that gullible state. And an energy treatment like that would be direct to the heart.
Yes.
Direct to the throat, so you could talk again if you're a man that doesn't know what to say next. Or if it's a scenario where, you're just trying to get to know someone better, it's about sending treatments to the shoulders to relax, body posture, to remind yourself at that parasympathetic level that this treatment you made 5 days before you went to go talk to a girl is waiting for you that moment that you do it. And if you did it 6 or 7 times, each being 5 minutes, that's 35 minutes of energy coming to you during that moment. You are trying to gain that relationship, and you are affecting yourself only, not entangling with that other person other than the mystical that comes forth of that general relationship.
That's certainly very true. And it's a lesson that you have to learn on your own, really.
Exactly. That's why I tell people to use Reiki 2 as the oracle to yourself. So the more and more treatments that you have an agenda and a calendar of sending yourself to, when those events in those treatments are triggered, like having an argument with your boss. That's one I tell everyone, in Reiki 2, it's the first thing on your list is if you ever have an argument with your boss, that there's a treatment waiting. Okay?
Yes,
an argument with your mother about you not having kids, there's a treatment rating. Those top 5 nag things that come, there's a treatment rating so that this body doesn't begin absorbing that in the parasympathetic level, the dirty energy. It says no right there and then replaces more of that no energy with yes, this is me.
Yes, that is so true. Yes.
Right? Yes, this is me, a sovereign being acknowledging my multidimensional self.
And that's really fascinating talking about relationships, because I know both of you, a lot of the times you get asked to hold counsel, and you're on monthly retainers to give people who are running large businesses and have to make really big decisions that can affect a lot of people. You're giving them regular advice. They can call you. I would just like to have a comparison of the differences. Like for you, Kathy, the different countries that you serve, what are the questions that come up when you normally do a reading? And for you, Andrew, because both of you have incredible skills that are very, very different.
Yeah, polar differences, yet they still come to treating this person that's there.
Yes, that's very true. For my experience, I would say each country is different. In Taiwan, the biggest question is always about love. Australia, the biggest question is always about when can I pay off my mortgage. In Hong Kong, the biggest question, there's 2 actually. One is parents' health, and the second is business. I probably specialize more in business because that was such a big topic. And you're right, Nat. Over in Hong Kong especially, people are very inventive and think outside the box. So there are many meetings that you get taken in on, and, in meetings like that, there's like 15, 20 people. No one introduces everyone. It's just hello, Miss whoever, Mr. whoever. And so your presence is not needed to be explained. And so during the meeting, you're just doing the reading, indicating with your prearranged signs if decisions need to be made then, or you'll take back whatever your objective information gathering is and discuss it later and then go back for your second part of the meeting. I find it a lot of fun because it's very interesting to see all the dynamics going on and the different avenues that get created at that moment. And then to work out a plan of action. It's a very smart way to use people like us.
Yes, I enjoy those also because you're not for me, it's a little different, because I get brought in, everyone's going to ask, who is this guy? It's in America. And other times it's, I'll listen to conversations, and they don't some people don't realize I'm listening in. It doesn't matter. It's just that's the choice of the people that have you on that kind of retainer, you know, because they are making big decisions that affect a lot of lives.
Yes, yes.
And you know, they want every avenue of the energy understood also, because these people are ultimately trying to be fourth dimensional business people. They're not stuck in the matrix. They understand that the energy is every much a part of a deal, as is the physical deal.
Well, didn't Elizabeth have a John D?
Yes, and every example has had that. Every king has had their wizard next to them too.
Yes, that is so true.
Alchemist, whatever you want to call it.
So you have to remember also with things like this is you're only doing the reading for the one person.
Right.
Like I've had people come in with their husband's article and wanting to know questions that really are not their business, and it's not our place to say, in which case you have to say no.
Right.
There has to be a certain amount of privacy that's related to this type of thing, and that's something that people need to learn to. There are boundaries, I suppose.
In a lot of times in the sessions that I'm doing, I run into scenarios where there's information that I could reveal to the person, but they would tremendously lose out on the experience of learning about it.
Yes.
So, the awareness to the Acacia record, this is a continuous source stream. And that source stream is looking at you, the human instrument, the spiritual person that's behind it, the physical person, as well as all of your past lives, your ancestral karma. It's all its own equation. And oftentimes beings have contracts in their soul that says, I must do this on my own. No one must do it for me. And if it gets done for them, they lose out so much.
Yes.
Or later in their life that they have to take on some other task to get that experience.
I agree. And there's often times where you just know that that information will not help them.
Right.
They will take it and run in the
wrong direction.
Well, although I don't want to be judgmental about it, but you know the consequences of that, what they're going to do with that information are not good for them.
Right.
And you want the best for them, and you're looking for the best possible scenario, showing them which are the paths that are more ideal for them and which are the pitfalls.
Right.
And please avoid these pitfalls.
Right.
But some people just can't help themselves.
Right. People
so
that
that's
have experienced violent crimes. I've had a lot of people that have come that have wanted to find the person that committed a violent crime against them. And right there I'm faced with that moral thing. Can I give that name to them? I can, but I won't.
Yeah.
Because I am going to then directly entangle with what they might not do, what they're going to do in their head.
That's right.
Because I have just given that thing power over something else. And I have to be very, very aware of concepts like that.
Yeah.
And then there are people that are very spiritual and just want to know something about someone else. And that's that other fine line when you're getting asked about other people.
That's
what you give, knowing that person, they have to absorb it and make decisions off of it.
Yeah. There is that fine line, and you definitely need to have your own boundaries and set boundaries and perimeters for people, because I guess often people don't really understand what they're asking because they are not aware of the answer. But once you know the answer, you sort of think, maybe I shouldn't have known that.
Right. In the countries that I do, in any given day, it's, East, West, Asia, China, South Africa, Europe, it's 100-something different countries that are constantly coming in. The bulk of the American questions are, who am I? But it's the who am I through the asking the Akashic record source stream. And it's a matter of me looking at this being and seeing what they can take back and process. So a lot of times it begins with a past life event of who you were that brought you to Earth. When you first immigrated to this planet, what was your soul about? What was your soul about on other worlds, so you can begin to incorporate what it is meaning here, so that for your personal awakening during this time of change, because it is the time of change now, where we're letting go of the old systems of cultural taboos and allowing new things to create, just like what we've got going here.
Yes. I mean, what would you define the records as being?
The Akashic record, it is the planet that shares space with you, that records from its perspective, non-interacting with you, what your life is like, what every experience that you've had from its perspective. And when you finish your life here, and you pass on and you go into the astral world, you have a life review. And that life review is the Akashic record being given to your soul. And you then take that record, and your soul has a record of every place that it's lived, every planet that it's lived. And then when you leave a planet and you go someplace else, you have a universal layer. So the Akashic record is the experience of the local place that you are living, or the galaxy, or the universe that you're living in. So there's many different scales, because we are multidimensional, multifunctional beings of light first. When we came here as a fetus, we started as light. All the way back to the beginning of time, before there was manifest, there was light. When we look at a deeper expression of the Akashic record, we go, well, the planet is experiencing every living sentient being simultaneously. And that is the big Akashic record on a bigger perspective as an Akashic record reader. So I can observe a being not from just the perspective of the planet, from every single perspective of every being that's interacted with it. So I can have a look of the polarity of karma the being has created through different epochs of time. So do I physically see this with my eyes? No, it is an equation of light that has an instantaneous answer to it. So it is me existing in that frequency of unity, which is the Akashic record. We are experiencing all things at all times. We are all of our past, present, and future selves simultaneously existing. By having that in my heart, the reading is that expression. And it's what that being individually needs at that moment. Many times I run into the medical questions. As I said, it's people that want to know, who am I, through the Akashic record, and the Akashic record is the light record of who we are. And then once we work into medical, we understand that almost every single disease is created through depression, regret, shame, blame, or guilt. The 6 things that really...
So basically it's everything from point dot till now, and you go to like an imaginary library, and you find Joe Bloggs, there he is, open it up, and it's all there.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of me querying the questions and then coming up with an answer that's in English, that is understandable. As an example, when I looked at the creation of our universe, I had to give it language. Or the creation of a fetus and a spark, you have to give it language. If you don't know the language, how is the person going to interpret the language if they don't know it? So linguistics is absolutely everything. You'll hear this time and time throughout my show, how important every single word means. When I enter an Akashic record frequency, I do what's called no time. I am no longer believing in time, and that this Akashic record reading is using all of my skills of all of my lifetimes combined in non-hierarchical order with anything else. So I have no competition with any part of the being.
What do you mean non-hierarchical order?
So in a hierarchical order, there's only one at the highest. And there can be, everyone is one. We are our own hierarchical order of ourself. We do not have the external influence that says you are not a creator being.
Okay.
It's coming from the internal. That's this whole New Age awakening, but it's spelled throughout every religion is the same thing. Is getting to that sovereign self where you can make all of your own decisions on all of the different energetic levels, because we have awareness and knowingness to do stuff with awareness. Like, if you gotta turn left, you need your blinkers on. A lot of people forget the blinkers. But those are tools. Those are tools that directly reflect of how to deal with spiritual situations where, you just by turning the blinkers on in the mystical format, that the people around you go around you. Or the hazard lights. Learning those techniques so that beings on the unaware level still bypass you. So that you don't intersect with negative karma, negative ancestral energies. And this is something else that comes up in sessions is people that have been dealing with, absolute horrible scenarios with hauntings or dreams or night terrors, which almost always come up to the ancestral lineage or the actual land that they're living on, because they're unaware of ancestral energies. They're unaware that, maybe where they're living was a cemetery 100 years ago, or people were killed on that property. Or worse, that something even worse happened 2-3 million years ago that is still affecting that land that has a portal on it.
You know, it's interesting you say that. We'll take a sideline about the experiences that happen. Like in Hong Kong, we have an area in Repulse Bay, and when the Japanese occupied, they slaughtered hundreds of people and threw them into the ocean. And that plot of land there has always had trouble selling, even though it's had the most magnificent houses there.
It's haunted.
Everyone reports stuff. And these are people that have just newly arrived in Hong Kong, so they would have no idea. No one's ever going to tell them, but no one can stay there.
No one can say that.
And it's just that energy.
We have been having some really fun conversations with Kathy here. And one of the questions I really wanted to talk to you about is shamanism. There's a huge difference in Eastern versus Western. So when you hear the English word or the European word shamanism, how does it compare to the Asian expression that you've learned?
Well, I'd say probably over in Asia, we don't really have shamans the same as you do over in the West. For us, it's a bit more religious-based, Buddhist or Taoist, and they have their own ceremonies and techniques and rituals in a sense. I'd say the most dramatic rituals are always from the Taoists. They do things like jumping with fire, throwing raw rice at you, a lot of incantations, a lot of what we call fuho, which is Chinese characters written on special paper that they may stick on a person or an object for whatever reason they're doing at that time.
And these are cyclical productions where every spring they have this ceremony or this ritual.
Correct.
Oftentimes on this show you'll hear me talk about ritual and ceremony, which is very much from a non-adaptive cultural perspective. We can take culture and apply it to anything. But from this Asian expression that you're saying, you know, the Taoists, the monks, and the different sets of monks, each bring their cultural perspective when they're bringing ceremonials and rituals.
Correct.
And when you have people that are living in the big cities that don't have that available to them, they have to learn to create their own. And sometimes looking at the Asian expression can really, really help people to begin, what does a ceremony mean? You know, as you were growing up in Asia, it was very common to give offerings to different statues in different places of location, whether it's an incense stick or a coin.
Certainly there's a lot of ceremony involved with different kind of gods and demigods.
Or ancestors.
Not so much, let's call it worshipping, as in acknowledgement. For over in Asia, ancestral roots are very important. If you were over in the West and let's say you have an ailment or an issue and you don't have access to these types of, let's call them Eastern shamans, then you would then call your grandmother or whoever who would then represent you to go to these places, and then they would call upon your ancestors to come and help you. In Eastern culture, ancestors are extremely important. Even in your everyday slang of talking, people will not only curse you, it's all your ancestors back many generations. And that's common, and not a rude way of saying things, but that's how serious people take their lineage.
When they take that culture and their lineage and they make it serious, you know, in that euphemistic way of using swear words as an expression, it gets right down to the point of what they're trying to say.
Yes.
A lot of times what I try to help people bring into this new expression of ancestors is they have to acknowledge them first.
Yes.
If they don't begin acknowledging them daily, you're not falling into what is an ancestral resolve, meaning the land that you're living on can bring you lots of positive energy, but if you don't even acknowledge it, how can it deliver it to you through synchronicities or through that benefit of ritual?
That is so true.
Yeah. So when we practice it with the culture or the daily aspect, whether you're self-generating your own or you're taking adaptations from other places that you live.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
What was your favorite rituals or ceremonies growing up? You know, the food is all perspective from it too.
I would say probably the favorite growing up would be Chinese New Year.
Chinese New Year.
Because you go and visit all your relatives, so they're all acknowledged. You must go from the oldest relative down.
And it's a tradition, oldest relative down. There's a reason behind it. Yeah.
Yes. And, well, for start, by the time you're the oldest, everyone can come to you and you have to move around and then you cook and whatever. But for the kids, you get the lucky money, which is a red packet with either your surname written on it or a good fortune word, something like this. And it wasn't actually the money, it was the excitement of getting the packets. But you getting to see all your family, and then whoever is the oldest would have a picture of your grandparents there as well. So you would all go and with the joss sticks, and you would pay the regards to them and do the bows and put it up, and everyone would do that. I mean, the rooms get pretty smoky. Yeah. But it's good to acknowledge it all, and then they would tell you stories. So every year you would learn new things about your family.
Stories of the family. And that's what I try to help people understand, that your ancestral family knowledge of your mother and father, their mother and father, and their mother and father before them.
Yes.
They store your image of who you were before
and where
you came
come
in,
from.
where you come from. You stand upon the shoulders of your ancestors.
That's so true. That's exactly how we would view it.
Yeah. Without being that perspective, how do Western people that have never seen ancestral understanding, who are trying to learn that spiritual ancestor is another part of spirituality, is an acknowledgement that it is different than common ghosts. Now, how do people in Asia treat common ghosts or versus ancestral stuff? How does that relate?
Well, common ghosts, we would call it guai. And generally, a common ghost is not considered a family or ancestor. It's like, not like a pest, but a negative entity that is unwanted. And depending on what they believe in, I mean, I suppose in many ways, each Western religion has a way of dealing with it. But depending on the Eastern stream that you believe in, you would get monks come in, or you would get the head honcho guy of whichever religion, because we have so many branches of even Buddhism. And they would come in, they would bless the place, they would do a little ceremony, often with little bells, certainly with a lot of incense. And
this is
again,
generally that person's job, to go house to house.
their specialty.
Yeah, that's their specialty.
And then
which we lack here in America, in the United States. Specialist people that do that regularly.
I would say, from what I understand, there isn't really so much, that isn't the same belief system. Like over in the East, it's very much, it's like calling Ghostbusters. I mean, it's a normal thing. I got a problem, I deal with it.
I got an energy problem. There's actually something in the phone book that says, dealing with a ghost, call this number.
Yeah, you're not embarrassed or feel awkward to explain it. There are alternatives. And whether you believe in that stream of tradition or religion doesn't matter. You don't have to believe it for it to work.
Exactly. Because the power is through the manifestation of where it's coming from, and then who's ultimately going to be dealing with that source. You know, there's an exchange, and then oftentimes in the Asian expression, the exchange comes down to some form of energy or money or some form of ancestral expression where, you know, you do something else for someone else.
Yes, very true. And you bringing up this point is interesting because in Hong Kong especially, we're all in apartments, so it's a very densely populated place. And often we have feng shui masters, which I guess you would call them environmental...
energy sensitive specialists.
Yeah. I was going to say manipulation, but...
And architects too.
Yes. And they often will have these, what we call bakwa. So it's like a hexagonal item with a mirror in the middle with some etchings on the around it, and you usually put it outside your apartment. If you can't hang it outside because if you're on the 18th floor, for example, you worry about it falling down and killing someone. So, you know, beyond cementing it in, they might just put it inside the window, but the mirror will be facing outwards. And their belief is that when the ghost comes, it will see itself and scare itself so much that it will go repel it. And that's very common.
And in my expression, when you're using mirrors, when something is remote viewing, remote experiencing, clairvoyance, clairsensing you, and it's coming through the open portal of the window, it sees its own reflection, as well as you've put energy into that mirror to tell it, this is my boundary line.
Yes. Yes.
And once you declare your boundaries in the four corners of your room, you have the beginning of a space you can make sacred.
Yes, I
and
agree.
do your healing, do your letdown, do your self-creations. You know, when you're in a 80-story apartment building with people above and below you, that could be 12,000 people in it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of energy. You know, and you have to deal with things like elevators. You know. How do the Asian cultures deal with the dense energies in public places?
Well, in many ways, I'd say they don't deal with it. But one thing you do find in such densely populated countries is that people have the ability to turn off.
Yes.
Because we're so used to having no space, that you could be in a crowded place and you're in your own little world and you literally are not aware of other people. I could sit next to you and you'd be on the phone and you think I hear everything, but the minute you've picked up the phone, I'm in fairyland and I'm not even
You're not even paying
until
attention.
you nudge me again, because I've gone into my personal space because I don't want to hear whatever it is. And I think that's, in a way, it's a coping mechanism. So people's energies don't come into you too much. Elevators and things like this, it's because it's uncomfortable when it's crowded. You're much more conscious, and you've probably set up your own boundaries subconsciously, purely because
you've done it so many times
they're touching me, and then you know their clothes look dirty, or they smell, or whatever it is. So your body is very alert, and it's auto-protected itself. It's when you're sitting on a very crowded underground train, or walking in the crowds, or waiting at wherever it is in this huge hallway to get into the elevator can take ages. And this is where you learn to just bubble up.
Just make a bubble around yourself.
Yeah.
I call that activating the pericardium, so that your energy of space has a boundary of, I am this being, and I'm not sharing energy with you.
Oh, okay.
And then the heart fills in that space and makes that I am forward action protected. So you have two layers.
That
So
makes
if
sense.
the heart beings really want to communicate with you, you can.
Yeah.
But the beings that are working with love with strings attached, they can't function through you. And it's a matter of belief and manifestation of that belief. Just like you said, you fall right into that fixture, because there's so many people and the energy is just so dense.
Yeah.
That if you don't have that coping skill, energy sensitives have very, very tough times, or just don't survive at all in the cities.
Yeah, well, I agree. I agree. It is a incredibly dense energy that you have to learn very young to cope with.
To cope with and then manipulate for your fair use.
Yes.
Because if you don't use it, it will abuse you over and over and over.
Oh,
again.
definitely. I mean, I've seen a lot of expats that come into Hong Kong later in life, let's say, 30, 40, 50 years old, and their coping skills are not that strong because they're just not used to it. And, they go wild because there's just too much energy attacking
they end
them.
up haunted.
There's
Whatever
something.
expression you want to call it, but they end up some form of self-haunting.
Yeah, they've gone off the edge.
Yeah, off the edge.
And whether or not they can rein themselves back in is very disputable.
Which is about coping skills once again.
Definitely.
So as a child growing up, a lot of people here in the Western or European expression don't exactly are given beliefs that help them cope with energy and that. In China as well as Asia, you have many rituals and ceremonies that acknowledge the passing of others and honor the dead, as well as honor the new living. So how have those different types of rituals and ceremonies helped you understand the East versus the West when it's dealing with death?
Well, I think we have festivals for everything.
Yeah. Well, here we
yearly.
don't really.
Yeah, we have a lot, and it's all about tradition,
Right.
and family, ancestors. So every year we have what we call Chengming, and that is, I guess you would call it the bone sweeping festival. So in the old days, you would go to the cemeteries and you would clean the bones of your ancestors and re-put them in.
Like literally clean the bones of their ancestors.
Yes.
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 This is an actual touching of them, literally cleaning, honoring the bones, and taking to that level of visceral interaction.
Yes. I mean, obviously these days we don't do that, but we visit.
Or the monks would do it.
No, these days it
No,
doesn't. I don't think. Honestly, I don't even think you're allowed to do it anymore because of all the hygiene issues
going on.
But the tradition of going and all the family go together. And when you're talking about big extended families, you can have 50 people all going, and all the cemeteries are very compact. And when you go there, again, it's storytelling about grandma, great-grandma, and this and that. And if someone has newly passed, it's very comforting for that immediate family to have all the relatives there. And you do this every year.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a bit too arranged to get everyone there at the same time. But it's nice to know that you're never alone. And the ones that are about to pass on also know that their loved ones won't be alone. There'll always be people at least once a year that will come. And, you know, obviously nowadays not everyone wants to be in a cemetery. They may get their ashes spread around wherever. But the principle's the same. If there was no graves to visit, people would just have lunch or dinner.
Lunch or dinner.
And the tradition is the same in that
Pass on.
sense.
Telling the stories.
Yes, and the
Which are-
acknowledgement.
Which is our oral history.
Yes.
Because without our oral history, who defines what? The media?
Yeah, well,
And we don't want the media to define our oral history.
yes. And then for the births, we have what you call munyut. So 1 month after the baby is born, you have a dinner where all the family comes. And I suspect the reason is in the old days, maybe not all babies would last 1 month.
Right.
So they wouldn't celebrate the birth until a month later.
So it got to that survival point, which is pretty common in a lot of cultures.
I think so.
Yeah.
And, you know, they would shave the baby's head and, you know, all these little traditions that they would do. But it's the same thing. It's a family tradition. And then you talk about your ancestors again because, you know, it looks like great-great-grandma and someone might produce a photo and, you know, all sorts of stories come out, whether you believe them or not.
Right.
You know.
But that's the oral colloquial history of what the
Yes.
last 3 generations of memory still have in oral history.
Yes, and I have to say that comparing it to the West, from my experience of friends and family that live in America or Australia, UK, is that doesn't seem to be any tradition to visit graves or cemeteries or get together to remember passing, which I find kind of, for me it's sad because I know how good it can feel to do that.
Mourn. Truly mourn, and then allowing mourning to becoming still co-creating with their memories.
Yes.
So a lot of Mediterraneans will still celebrate the death 1 year or 2 years or 5 or 10 years, but that's kind of ingrained into that culture, whereas the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, not to label or culturalize anything, they generally deal with the deaths on the moment, have the wake, and then they're done.
Yes.
And then it's the individual family that gets together to mourn each passing or to assist in the mourning process.
Yes.
You know, another big thing in Asia is, you know, and Kathy gets asked this a lot, is the Asians are very much, and especially in Hong Kong, they're very much into names. So, for example, when you form a business or when you've got it, because racing is very big, horse racing in Hong Kong is very big, the right name for the horse. You know, I know you've got a few tales to tell on that one, Kathy. Would you care to share your experiences on that?
Well, certainly in Hong Kong, people are very, very fussy about the name. It has to be a lucky name and a strong name. It may not necessarily mean the same in Chinese as it will in English, but they're very into extremely dominating names. And then sometimes they will directly translate from Chinese to English, and then they sound very mamby-pamby kind of names. So it can really depend on...
Like Fluffy Butterfly.
Yes, or Fairy King Prawn.
Yeah.
You know, there is a guy that's quite well known that is in the prawn business, and he gets called all sorts of nicknames. So his horses always have something to do with shrimps or prawns.
Shrimps or prawns.
And it doesn't really sound very powerful in English. But in Chinese it sounds quite good.
They're using the power of myth with the mythos of each individual symbol. Because remember, in the Asian expression, they're not using our English letters. They're using pictography.
Oh, yes, yes, very much so.
Right.
And they're very into all sorts of mythical characters as well with their names,
Right.
including dragons. This is obviously a very strong character and imagery for Asia. And we have quite a well-known story about the dragon's back tale, which probably Nat could tell better than me.
Oh yeah, we have in Hong Kong. We have the island, and then we have the mainland, which is Kowloon, and there are these mountains that are sort of like a mountain ridge, and what happens is there's so much construction all the time in Hong Kong, so they've made mines by that mountain. They're literally cutting into the mountain, and there was a big uproar because the mining companies were cutting too much into the dragon's back. And they were very, very worried for, Hong Kong's economy and everything. And there was actually a huge downfall in the economy. And then we had the 97 handover. So a lot of what these feng shui masters actually predicted happened in that area.
And you cannot build a building without the feng shui architectural approval.
That's very true.
Like literally, that's how ingrained feng shui is into the society there.
Yes, even the main Hong Kong bank.
Right.
It was all about feng shui, as well as the architecture, the modern architecture.
Yeah.
And it cost a fortune.
Imagine that here in the United States, feng shui, you couldn't build a building or a road or a freeway or anything without the feng shui master's approval. That wouldn't fly here,
No,
or in
I don't
Europe,
think
or
so.
in Germany. But if they understood the energy behind the architecture, it would be inherent in all of the architecture that we could use.
Yes, yes. And a lot of this is also going back to the flowing energy, the chi of an environment. The biggest challenge with feng shui is if you are going to ask about it, you have to be prepared to move things.
Right.
If you're not prepared to make great changes, then you shouldn't really ask a feng shui master. But if you do, you really should give him a list of things that you're not prepared to do, such as change a whole doorway.
Right.
Because practically that's expensive and sometimes impossible. But then you don't want them to tell you that you should do it, because then they'll be on your mind forever.
Right.
So
Which
you have
puts
to
the imprint in you, that's the only way that it can be fixed.
Yes.
And like moving doorways, well, there's a reason. If that door is a 200-year-old door, there's 200 years worth of energy moving through it.
Yes.
So that's why they tell you to move a door, so that door doesn't open up and close on its own anymore.
Yes.
When you're having those ghostly haunting moments, because that does happen. Or it just alters the way a business, let's say it was a business that's been there for 5 years, and they're telling you to move the door so they're not entering the old business's energy. That you're having that new frequency that's attached to a name that has pictography and myth attached to it. When you add the power of myth and mythos into the pictography, you have a very deeper understanding how their language is very different than ours here in the West, as well as in the United States.
And another thing we have, which is very, very big in the feng shui, is the mirrors, the placement of mirrors. Big, big deal in Asia, especially in Hong Kong.
Oh yes, certainly. I'd say the main belief is that you really shouldn't have mirrors in a bedroom. And this is because they believe that ghosts, spirits, whatever it is, this is their doorway.
Yourself can see yourself in reflection as a dreaming body, which can make a multidimensional self that you're not ready to deal with.
Exactly.
Here in the States, it's common to have a full-length mirror in front of your bed
Yes.
or above your bed.
Yes.
Okay? That's the dichotomy of the two sides.
Yeah. It's a challenge because sometimes it's already if you're renting especially, it's not like you can take the mirrors off the wall that they're already attached. I mean, the remedy that you would use is at night you would cover it with a sheet.
Cover it with a sheet.
It doesn't look pretty, but it's a remedy.
It still serves the purpose.
Yeah. And they also believe if you have mirrors in a family room, like where you have dinner, that will cause arguments because it just magnifies everything. Right. So you shouldn't have a mirror there either.
So, and you have the traditional United States building where you have these giant windows, 10, 12 windows, right where the family dinner table is. Yes, you're all looking outside, but everything's also looking in.
Yes.
And again, culture and style, belief system. So when you're using feng shui as a perspective, they're looking at all the different ways the family lives in union with the ancestors, the religion that they're using, the energy of the people around them too. If the building needs to be cleaned in a certain way. Taking some of these concepts and applying what can work for you in your own little environment. If you're in a loft in New York City or in Chicago or Kansas City or in a one-bedroom house in the middle of Oklahoma, you can take some of these common things, covering your mirrors up, See how it feels.
Yeah.
Okay? And then, dealing with your front door. I tell people about their mailbox. That is where the energy of the system has marked you. You can do your own rituals that state that any of the system energy stay there. Just like we're talking about ceremonies, you can make it so that no government energy enters your home if you create an agenda of energy hygiene that reflects that in your spirituality that you do daily, weekly, monthly, not as a common task, but something you just do because it's a part of you. Just like when we were talking about the rituals that you go to and the joss sticks that are so smoky that you're tearing. All of that is the culture ingrained to them. It's second nature.
That's very true. And it can come down to very basic things too. Like Chinese believe that if you have the toilet seat up, and this is just the lid, that your money will go down the toilet literally. So you must always have the toilet lid down to keep the money in the house.
Well, in the
This is
American
very
side,
basic.
it's the toilet seat goes up because a man was using, and if the toilet seat's down, that was
I mean the lid.
the lid. Yeah, I'm talking the actual lid on
Oh
it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, the seat up with the lid on it. It's the classic male versus female battle.
Yes, so whether or not this was like passed down by women
Yeah, exactly.
thousands of years ago, or it's really true.
Throughout culture, throughout history, as long as we've had toilets and toilets. Not that one.
Well, the most unlucky numbers would be 11.
11.
And that's because it's 2 candles.
Yeah.
And for Chinese anyway, when you have someone that passed away, you put the 2 candles there.
Yeah.
So they would consider that bad.
Because it has that myth attached that something's passed on. So we have this thing that goes throughout the world where people catch 11:11 on the clock.
Yes.
So how is that in the Asian perspective?
Well, we would consider that the unlucky
The
minute.
unlucky minute of the day.
But it certainly is very interesting and strange. Like for us, the luckiest number is 8. The second luckiest would be 9, and then 7. So you see any license plates in Hong Kong, they go for a fortune if they have all 8s in them. I mean, a fortune.
Like they actually sell those plates, so they
Yes.
make a fortune off of them.
Kathy, describe a fortune in US dollars. Just to give some perspective, because when you talk about when we talk about a fortune, I mean, Hong Kong has the single most millionaires anywhere in the world.
I think people would pay, let's say ballpark, nearly $1 million US for a very lucky number, because that's their ideology is that they're in the car all the time. It's lucky with them all the time. They won't get in certain
It's what gets them to and
cars.
from business. It's what brings them to their places
Yeah.
of power. And it's something that they've incorporated to their belief of daily life.
Yes.
That they must have that on their car.
Yes.
Well, we can take this concept and make it ourselves here. It's called bumper stickers. So all 7 bumper stickers.
And just stick it over the number.
Exactly, just stick it over the number.
Yeah, but numerology is very big in Asia, very big. Everything with numbers. They don't like touching things with unlucky numbers, won't get in cars with lucky numbers. I mean, this is people that are quite into it. I mean, not everyone believes in this,
Right.
so some
It
won't
comes to
worry
a
about
point
it.
where it can be easily observed or perceived as superstition. And every culture has that. And I can know, and from the Greek culture, there are, certain things that you have done, with the priest each year. Otherwise, the superstition is something bad's going to happen. And every culture has those. But when we're dealing with people who are taking numerology as part of their spiritual expression from what they were taught as their mother and father all the way until they're 40 or 50, and they're living in a world of big business, big finance, or just they're a factory owner or a shop owner or just a regular worker who has taken the power of this myth and ingrained it in themselves as part of their life path. People that get tattoos often have very much power, find themselves empowered.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. You're adding
And
that
actually,
symbology.
the dragon is very popular with the tattoos in
Oh,
Asia, certainly, because it's a strong, powerful mythology, and it's the dragon's breath as well. It's all intertwined.
Right.
and then
into
imprinted.
the mythos, right? And even into the, like we were talking before about traditional Chinese medicine, when they go to certain points, they relate them to names like well springs or dragon points or ghost points or all sorts of things that translate into in English that help you understand the metaphor behind the energy center, which actually relates to a cultural reference of how to live.
Yes. Yes.
Then when you take a deeper understanding of that is you have ways to look into yourself with preventative health, maintenance, the simple things that you do on your own through lifestyle, as well as energy lifestyle that lead to very positive synchronicities happening so you can be abundant and manifest.
Yes, that's certainly a very good way to put it.
You know, we as manifesting conscious beings who must apply sacredness or recreational to each experience now. Why? Because we're at that time we have to. We have to make a delineation of what we're doing to create sacred healing, sacred abundant energy, to be in communion and union with all sides of the perspective instead of just working with the one. Because energy, feng shui, healing, all of the stuff we've been talking about is that unseen world that is seen by those people who choose to observe it and interact with it, co-create with it, make it part of their mythos, their daily belief.
Yeah, it's almost like a necessary part, and it gives them some guidance over certain things.
Right.
Whether it's justified or not. It's
It
their
doesn't
belief.
matter. It's their belief. It's
Yeah.
their life. It's their manifestation, co-creation, and we cannot judge it.
Yes.
When we fall into judgment, we fall into that shame, blame, guilt. Depression, regression, obsession. When we deal with those things constantly, we are never in ourselves and be able to be co-creative our own inner self so we can find our dream to make what makes us happy. And once we know that dream, all we have to figure out is the difference between a want and a need.
Yes.
And you will be abundant and you'll manifest things quite easily. The simple equations, wants and needs, finding that abundance, knowing when your time is right to act in the now. Wow, we've had a really, really special show. Kathy, I want to thank you for coming on, and I want to let people know, there are times the adepts have to be in the field, and this was one of those scenarios where we were able to catch Nat on a time where she was out in the field. And being out in the field is so required now, and getting Kathy to come into work and to be a part of the team, again, as bringing the adepts out in the field.
That's right. It was kind of fun. I had a few sessions lined up, and Kathy was flying in, and I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Here's the studio. It's ready. And I promise I'll call in and I'll find a reception somewhere and we'll do this. And, after working with the horses the whole day and then coming into this frequency, it's such a gift to see my great friends and to hear them talk about all the masterful things that they've done. I mean, the experiences alone that I've had with Kathy over the 30 odd years that we've now been great friends have been immense. And then to have two great friends share their experiences with people, it's just such a gift. I thank you so much for this. I really do. It makes it easier for me to go out there knowing that the show continues and, people are really stepping up now and showing their golden keys.
Well, it's certainly been a good time.
And I want to thank everybody that has tuned into the show and remind you to click the follow button on the Ustream or the YouTube channel. And we'll catch you again the same time, same place, Wednesdays, Adventures into Reality.